Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. Jeremiah 29:12-13. There are moments in life that fracture us. Moments that take everything we thought we knew and set it on fire. This isn't a story about religion or about rebellion or even about certainty. It's about the war between silence and the truth, between expectations and identity. And if you've ever found yourself questioning, breaking, or just gasping for something more than tradition, then this story is for you. Not because it offers all the answers, but because it's real. My name is Yusuf. I wasn't supposed to tell this story. In fact, everything in my upbringing screamed at me to bury it. But when the walls finally crumbled and the dust settled, I discovered something so powerful that it demanded to be spoken, even if it cost me everything. This is the journey of how I lost everything I thought mattered, to find the one thing I never knew I needed. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:18. I was born into a world of precision, spiritual precision. In my home, faith wasn't a choice. It was the air we breathed, the law we followed, the armor we wore. I didn't question it because I wasn't allowed to. Obedience was love. Silence was strength. My father was the embodiment of honor, a respected leader in our mosque, a man whose words weighed like scripture. I admired him, feared him, wanted nothing more than to make him proud. From the moment I could walk, I was walking toward a purpose laid out for me by centuries of expectation. I was a son, a warrior of tradition. My mother was softer, but no less devout. Her love came in prayers whispered over my forehead, her protection in warnings about temptation. I memorized holy texts before I ever wrote a sentence of my own. I could recite with perfect tone, perfect timing, perfect reverence. And the more I submitted, the more I was praised. Every ritual performed flawlessly, every fast completed, every debate won in defense of our faith. These were bricks in the wall I was building around my identity. I wasn't just living a belief, I was becoming it. There's a kind of pride that sneaks in when you're applauded for compliance. I wore my piety like a badge, and why wouldn't I? It made me feel powerful, even chosen. My community saw me as an example, a prodigy, a young man filled with fire for truth. But what I didn't see at the time was how that fire could also burn me. Because behind the rituals, behind the speeches and declarations, there were questions. Small at first, then sharp. Questions that felt like betrayal the moment they formed. I didn't speak them aloud. I couldn't. In our world, questions were seen as cracks in the foundation, a sign that the enemy was near. So I buried them, deeper and deeper. I learned to smile through uncertainty, to chant louder when the doubts crept in. My father taught me that emotion was weakness, that doubt was disobedience, and that spiritual war meant never surrendering to confusion. So I armored myself in certainty. I refused to feel. I refused to look inward, because I was afraid of what I'd find. Still, something within me stirred. A whisper, a presence. It wasn't loud, not like the sermons I had grown up with, but it was insistent, and it didn't demand obedience. It offered something different, something like peace. At night, after the house had gone quiet, I would sit with those whispers. I didn't know who I was talking to. Was it God? Was it my own mind? But it felt real, and it scared me, because if it was real, then maybe everything else wasn't. In Damascus, faith is woven into every brick, every sound, every call to prayer. It surrounds you, and it traps you. You can't outrun something that lives in the air itself, but the pressure to conform is just as strong, and I was proud to conform, until I started to crack. I remember staring at my own reflection one day, wondering who I was beneath the titles. Was I Yusuf, the faithful son? Or was I someone else entirely? Someone I'd never been allowed to meet? I want you to pause here if you've ever asked yourself, what if there's more? If you've ever laid awake at night, staring at the ceiling, drowning in the weight of expectations, then I see you. This story isn't just mine. It might be yours too. And if it is, I want to invite you to stay with me. Not because I have answers, but because sometimes the act of telling is the beginning of healing. Stay with me. There's more. Come to me. All you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28. The silence between me and God grew heavier as the years went on, not because I stopped praying. I prayed more than ever, but the prayers felt mechanical, like echoing words off stone walls. I wasn't asking, I was performing. It was as if my soul had been trained to speak in a language it no longer understood. But I kept going, clinging to the structure, hoping that routine would eventually lead to revelation. It didn't. Instead, the ache in my chest deepened. Something was off. I just didn't know what. Or maybe I did, and I was too afraid to name it. There was a moment, small, forgettable to anyone else, that stuck with me. I saw a boy, maybe 10 years old, sitting outside the mosque holding a book that wasn't from our tradition. He was just reading, calmly, peacefully. A man passed by and smacked it out of his hands. "That's not for us," he snapped. The boy didn't cry. He just stared at the pages on the ground, and I felt it. A sharp jab, like my chest had been pried open for a second. I didn't understand why it haunted me, but it did. Maybe because deep down, I knew I'd been that boy too. Just older, better trained, better at hiding. My father's approval ruled my world. His nod was my validation. His silence was my punishment. I remember once answering a theological question with hesitation. I didn't mean to. I just paused, thinking. That pause cost me. He didn't scold me with words, just looked at me with something between disappointment and warning. That look was worse than any rebuke. So I learned to speak quickly, confidently, even when I wasn't sure. I learned to fake certainty, because in our home, doubt wasn't a phase, it was a disease. But that disease was spreading in me, quietly, persistently. I tried to drown it in study. I read more scripture, fasted longer, debated harder, but nothing silenced the whisper. Not really. I started to notice inconsistencies in our teachings, in our actions. I'd recite verses about mercy, and then watch men shout for vengeance. I'd preach about love and then feel my own heart full of resentment. And slowly I realized the faith I had inherited wasn't the same as the God I was beginning to sense. One was rigid, the other was reaching. One night I sat on the rooftop alone, watching the stars. I whispered, "If you're real, I mean really real, show me." I didn't expect thunder or miracles. I just wanted to feel something. A breeze moved across my skin, and I know it sounds simple, even cliché, but it felt personal. For the first time in years, I wasn't praying to a concept. I was speaking to someone who listened. I cried that night, not because I had clarity, but because I felt seen. And for a man who had spent his life being watched but never truly known, that was a miracle in itself. Still, I told no one. How could I? My reputation was untouchable. I was the future imam, the scholar in training. To admit doubt would be to invite shame, exile, maybe worse. So I buried it. I smiled. I led prayers. I corrected others with confidence I didn't have. But inside I was crumbling. And when you live two lives for long enough, one of them always starts to die. I just didn't know which one yet. If you've ever had to pretend, to smile when your heart was breaking, to preach when your soul was silent, then you know this feeling. It's not just exhaustion, it's spiritual suffocation. You're not weak, you're human. And maybe, just maybe, what you're feeling isn't betrayal. It's invitation. An invitation to ask, to seek, to wrestle. Keep listening. It's okay to keep going, even if you don't know where the path leads yet. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. It was during a public demonstration that everything shifted. The tension in our city had reached a boiling point. Anger over foreign invasions, over disrespect, over the erosion of our culture. The sermons had become more militant, more urgent. I didn't question them. I participated. We marched, we chanted, we prepared to defend our beliefs, with words if possible, with force if necessary. I believed I was doing the right thing. After all, righteous anger was still righteous, right? Then came the encounter. A man standing near the mosque, not one of us. He was speaking softly, holding something in his hand. A book, not our book. A crowd formed. Someone shouted. I turned and saw him. Calm, older, with eyes that didn't flinch. I expected defiance. I found peace. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't provoke. He simply offered a message, one I wasn't ready to hear. But when he looked at me and called me by name, my real name, something in me shattered. I don't know how he knew it. I don't know why it mattered, but it did. He said, "Justice without love is vengeance." My instinct was rage. I shouted, recited, accused him of heresy. I was loud enough to drown out the quake happening inside me. He didn't fight back. He just handed me the book and said, "If you seek truth, let it speak." I took it, not to read, to destroy, to silence the voice that dared challenge everything I had built. But I didn't destroy it. I hid it, tucked it beneath my bed, under blankets of tradition. I told myself it was for study, to expose the lies. But the real reason, something inside me was curious, threatened, drawn. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened it. Page by page, the words were foreign, yet familiar, like a language I had once known but forgotten. Love your enemies. Forgive those who harm you. Turn the other cheek. It wasn't weak. It was disarming. Each night I read more. I didn't tell anyone. Not my wife, not my friends, especially not my father. I started having dreams, always the same man, clothed in white, eyes full of sorrow and love, hands marked by scars. He never shouted. He whispered, "Follow me," again and again. I'd wake up sweating, heart pounding. Was I cursed or was I being called? I tried to pray it away. I recited our scriptures. I fasted. I sought counsel, without revealing too much. But the dreams persisted. And the book? I couldn't put it down. Every time I read, I felt both fear and relief, as if something within me was being uncovered, not replaced, uncovered. The man I was pretending to be began to war with the man I was becoming. Friend, if you've ever had something come into your life that threatened everything, a book, a person, a whisper in the dark, and you weren't sure if it was danger or destiny, then you understand what I faced. I didn't choose the storm, but I chose not to run, and that choice would change everything. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 5:10. It didn't take long for my secret to unravel. My wife found the book. Her face went pale like she had seen a ghost. Her hands trembled as she held it up to me. "Burn it," she whispered. I told her I would. I lied. That night I opened it again, not to rebel, but because it had become my only place of peace. I didn't know who I was anymore, but I knew I wasn't who I used to be. I prayed differently now. Not the memorized lines, not the structured phrases. I spoke with desperation, like a drowning man gasping for air. I begged for clarity, from Allah, from the heavens, from whoever was listening. But the only answer that returned was silence, except in my dreams. "There," the man still whispered. "Follow me." This time his voice wasn't urgent. It was tender, and I wept. Then came the rage. My father stormed into the house like a fire. He saw the book. He didn't speak. Not at first. Just stared at it with disgust. Then he erupted. Shame, fury, betrayal. "You are not my son." His words hit harder than his fists. My wife took the children and left. Just like that, my world, my legacy, my identity, gone. I sat on the floor for hours, hollowed out by loss. All that remained was the book and the whisper. They came for me next. My uncle, neighbors, men I once led. They dragged me into the street, burned my belongings, beat me while shouting, "Apostate!" I barely escaped. Bruised, hunted, alone. I became a ghost in my own city. Every alley held danger. Every face held judgment. I didn't know where to go, but I couldn't stay. A friend, Hassan, found me, broken, bruised himself. He said they were coming. He handed me coins, a name, a way out. "Leave tonight." I did. I packed nothing but the book, a change of clothes, and a scarf Layla had left behind. Crossing the border was like stepping off a cliff. I didn't know if I'd live. I only knew I had no choice. If you've ever lost everything, home, love, family, for a truth you can't ignore, you know this pain. But I'll tell you this. Sometimes the worst breaking is the beginning of the greatest healing. Keep walking. You're not alone. I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you. John 14:18. Crossing into Lebanon wasn't liberation. It was survival. The night we crossed, the desert was unforgiving. Bitter cold winds, dust in every breath, fear behind every step. The smuggler, Mahid, barely spoke a word, just hand signals, grunts, and urgency. We moved beneath tarps, ducked under fences, prayed we wouldn't be caught. I didn't feel brave. I felt like a man burying himself alive, unsure if resurrection would ever come. Every mile we traveled away from Damascus, a piece of my identity stayed behind. But I didn't miss it. I only missed my children. During the journey, a sandstorm struck. Fierce, violent, blinding. We couldn't see, couldn't breathe. I fell to my knees, shielding my face, trembling. And in that moment of helplessness, I cried out, not to Allah, but to Jesus. I didn't plan it. I didn't mean to. The name just escaped my lips like it had been waiting all along. Jesus, help me. As suddenly as it had come, the storm died. I opened my eyes. Was it coincidence? I didn't know, but something inside me shifted. For the first time in my life, I felt protected, not by tradition, not by doctrine, but by presence. When we reached the border, it was dawn. The horizon was painted with orange light, and for the first time in weeks, I could breathe without fear of being chased. Mahid pointed toward the mountains and disappeared into the dust. I was alone, exhausted, hollow. I sat beside the road, wondering what came next. I had no plan, no money, no allies, just a torn scarf, a foreign land, and a book that had upended my entire life. But something, or someone, kept whispering, "Keep going." That's when I met Miriam, a refugee like me, but with a steadiness I couldn't explain. She found me beside the road, asked no questions, just said, "Come." She led me to a small shack patched together with metal, hope, and mercy. She offered me bread, water, and silence. I broke down. I cried in front of her like I hadn't even allowed myself to cry in front of God. She didn't comfort me with platitudes. She just sat with me. And in that quiet, I felt something holy. In 2004, in the slums of Beirut, a man with nothing found the first taste of peace. Not closure, not clarity, just peace. I lay on the floor that night, wrapped in a blanket of dust and doubt. "Jesus," I whispered, "if you're real, stay with me." I didn't know what I believed. I just knew that something had begun, and I couldn't undo it. I didn't need all the answers. I just needed presence. And somehow, he was there. Miriam came back the next day with food. Still no questions. She simply said, "You're not alone." I didn't believe her, not yet. My heart still ached for my sons, for Layla, for the father who now called me dead. But I stayed. I didn't know where else to go. The book remained under my mattress, unopened, but never forgotten. The dreams had stopped, but the memory of the voice lingered. And even in the silence, it pulled at me. Have you ever lost your entire identity, only to find a strange calm in the wreckage? If so, I see you. You're not crazy. You're not lost. You're shedding skin that never fit. And I promise, there's life on the other side of that shedding. Don't turn back. Don't silence the voice that calls you deeper. Where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there am I with them. Matthew 18:20. One afternoon, Miriam invited me to a meeting. "It's just a group of people," she said. "Like you." I hesitated. "I'm not one of you," I told her. She smiled gently. "Maybe you're more like us than you think." I don't know why I said yes. Maybe loneliness. Maybe hunger. Maybe that whisper I still couldn't name. We walked through alleyways, through silence, down a narrow stairwell into a basement lit by a single bulb and filled with tired eyes and open arms. No one asked who I was. No one questioned my past. They simply nodded as I entered. A dozen people from all walks of life sat on mats, holding worn Bibles and each other's pain. They began to pray. Not with formula or performance, just raw honesty, gratitude, confession, hope. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just listened. And as their voices filled the room, something inside me cracked. I didn't understand it all, but I understood one thing. I was seen. I kept returning. Not because I believed everything. I didn't. But because something in that room fed my soul. The warmth, the grace, the absence of fear. One night, a man named Daniel shared his story. He had fled Aleppo after losing his wife and daughter in a bombing. His voice broke. He wept. And as I watched his grief spill out without shame, something in me broke too. Without planning it, I spoke. I told them about my mosque, the chants, the fire, the preacher, the dreams. I expected silence. I expected fear, but no one flinched. Some cried. One woman held my hand, and I realized I had carried so much shame, thinking I was unworthy, ruined, heretical. But in that moment, I was simply human, and being human was enough. They didn't need me to be anything but honest. And for the first time in my life, honesty felt holy. It wasn't rebellion, it was healing, and I didn't want to run from it anymore. Nights were still hard. I'd hold Layla's scarf and listen for the laughter of children in the wind. I missed them more than I could bear. I prayed for them every night. Jesus, bring them back to me. But no answer came, just silence. And yet, even in that silence, I stayed. Not because it was easy, but because I had nowhere else to belong. And maybe this was belonging enough. I began reading the Bible again. Slowly, reluctantly. Daniel helped me. He read with patience, explained without pressure. The words no longer felt like an enemy's scripture. They felt like balm. One night he read, "For God so loved the world," and I broke. I wept. I didn't understand everything, but I believed that love. Somehow it refused to let me go. If you're wrestling right now, between what you were taught and what you're beginning to feel, I want you to know, you don't need to have it figured out. God isn't waiting for your perfection. He's waiting for your honesty. Come as you are. That's the beginning of everything. The Lord is near to all who call on him, to all who call on him in truth. Psalm 145:18. Then came the letter. Miriam found me one evening and handed me an envelope. Her fingers shook. "It's from Damascus," she said. My breath caught in my throat. The handwriting, I knew it. It was from Layla. I opened it slowly, afraid of what it would say. Her words were sharp, desperate. "Return to Islam, and we can be a family again. If not, don't come back." My knees buckled. My hands trembled. I read it again and again, hoping the words would change. They didn't. She wrote that the children asked for me, that my father told them I was dead. She begged me to reconsider, not out of hate, but out of fear. Fear for our souls, fear for their future. I understood. But I also knew I couldn't return. I couldn't unsee what I had seen. I couldn't unknow what I now knew. That night, I held her scarf, pressed it to my face and cried. "Jesus," I said, "I trust you, but I miss them. I miss them so much." There was no answer, just silence. But even in the silence, I wasn't alone. I felt a presence with me. Not solving, not fixing, just staying. I didn't need a miracle. I needed presence, and that presence remained. The next time we met as a group, I shared the letter. I read it aloud. The room fell silent. Then Daniel opened the Bible and read, "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted." I nodded. I didn't feel near, but I believed the words. That was enough. I kept coming back to the group. Not out of routine, but out of need. That basement became my sanctuary. Not because it offered answers, but because it offered space. A space to break, a space to heal, a space to hope. I started speaking more, then teaching. Hesitantly at first, then boldly. I shared my dreams. I shared my pain, and others began to share theirs too. And in that room of broken souls, something sacred grew. We were not perfect. We were not whole, but we were healing. And healing together is its own kind of miracle. One night I stood on the shore in Beirut, watching the waves crash beneath the moonlight. I whispered, "Lord, I give them to you. Take care of them." I didn't know if he would, but I knew I couldn't carry them alone anymore. That moment wasn't closure, but it was surrender. And surrender, I learned, is where healing truly begins. If you've ever stood at the edge of your life, clutching broken dreams and wondered if God was still with you, let this be your reminder. He never left. He doesn't turn from our pain. He steps into it. Stay open, stay soft. The healing is coming. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Psalm 147:3. I didn't know healing could look so quiet, so ordinary. There were no lightning bolts, no visions, no voices from the clouds. Just people, broken like me, showing up again and again. Some nights we sat in silence. Others we sang songs I barely understood. But always there was something in the room that held us all together. It was fragile and strong at the same time, like grace. We were not perfect. Some doubted more than they believed. Some cried every prayer. Some came just for the bread. But we were there, and somehow that made us family. Daniel became like a brother. He taught me not just scriptures, but how to live again, how to speak slowly, how to forgive slowly, how to believe slowly. He told me, "You don't need to run anymore." That stuck with me, because I had been running for years, from my past, my guilt, my pain, even from God. But now, I started to let myself stay in the discomfort, stay in the uncertainty, stay in the process. I was still angry sometimes, still full of questions, but I stayed. I found work at a local market, hauling crates, lifting boxes, delivering goods. It was exhausting, humbling, but it gave me something I hadn't had in a long time: purpose. The man who hired me didn't ask for my past. He just said, "Be here at 5 a.m. That job became more than income. It became discipline. It became structure. And in those long, sweaty hours, I started to rebuild. Not the life I had lost, but something entirely new. I missed my family every single day. The pain didn't lessen. It just became familiar. I'd walk home from work, scarf tucked in my pocket, fingers tracing the edges. I prayed for them every evening. Lord, let them know I still love them. There was no word from Damascus, just silence. But the silence no longer felt like abandonment. It felt like a sacred waiting, like something was still unfolding. And I began to believe, truly believe, that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant carrying the love with open hands. I began to read scripture not as an enemy or student, but as a son. There were days the words jumped off the page, days they cut me open, days they felt distant, but I kept reading. And every once in a while, a verse would hold me, like a hand on my back. And I'd remember, I wasn't writing this story alone. God was with me, pen in hand, not erasing my pain, but redeeming it, sentence by sentence. The people in our group began to change too. We grew stronger, closer. New refugees came, some with fire in their eyes, some barely able to speak. They brought stories that made ours feel small, and yet none of us competed in our suffering. We carried it together. I began to teach more, sometimes simply by listening. I never claimed authority. I only offered my scars. And somehow those scars became bridges. If you're still in the middle of your storm, still working, still aching, still waiting, don't give up. Healing isn't loud, it's faithful. It's found in ordinary mornings, in whispered prayers, in the love of strangers. Keep showing up. That's how light gets in. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him. Romans 8:28. It wasn't long before I began receiving letters, not from home, but from others. People who had heard pieces of my story, people who were searching. They asked questions I once asked. They told me things they'd never told anyone. Some were from my old world, still hidden, still afraid. Some were angry, accusing me of betrayal, but others were curious. I answered each one carefully, prayerfully. I didn't want to convert them. I just wanted them to know they weren't alone. One letter came from a teenager in Homs. He said, "I saw him in my dreams too." That one made me weep. Not because I needed validation, but because it meant I wasn't imagining it. That same man in white had stepped into someone else's night. I told the boy, "You're not crazy. He comes gently. Keep listening." That's when I realized this story, my story, wasn't just for me. It was for others. Maybe for you. I started speaking more publicly, quietly at first. A small video, a voice recording, then a testimony. At first I was terrified. What if they came after me again? What if my family saw it and felt betrayed? But then I remembered, the truth that sets you free doesn't always come without cost. And I had already lost everything. What else could they take? What I found instead was connection. People began to write, "Thank you. I thought I was the only one." Still, I carried grief like a second skin, especially for my children. I didn't know what they looked like now. I didn't know if they remembered me. I didn't even know if they were safe. That ache didn't leave, but the bitterness did. I stopped blaming God for the loss. I began to thank Him for the glimpse of love I once had, even if it was now out of reach. And somehow, even in loss, I found gratitude. That's how I knew I was healing. Miriam and Daniel remained by my side. We prayed together often, not for miracles, but for endurance, for peace in the waiting, for hope that didn't demand proof. Those prayers shaped me more than any sermon I had ever heard. They were honest, they were raw, they were enough. And in their echoes, I felt the presence of that same voice, still whispering, still calling. If you feel like your voice doesn't matter, that your pain is too small or your doubts too big, let me say this: your voice matters more than you know. Your wounds aren't disqualifiers, they're doors. Someone is waiting on the other side of your honesty. Don't hide it. Speak. You may not be called to preach, but you are called to live out truth. Loudly, gently, boldly. You don't need a platform. You need surrender. God will do the rest. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. Isaiah 43:1. I never thought I'd use the word redeemed for myself. For a long time, I thought it only applied to people who were pure or close to perfect, people who hadn't burned bridges or betrayed their families. But now I know redemption is exactly for people like me, people who've broken, people who've doubted, people who were lost and too ashamed to say it out loud. That's who Jesus came for. That's who He finds. One night I stood outside staring at the stars. I whispered, "What do you want from me?" The answer didn't come in thunder. It came in a quiet certainty. I just want you. Not your performance, not your perfection, just you. I broke. I dropped to my knees, not in fear, but in release. I stopped trying to earn what had already been offered freely. I didn't understand grace. I just received it. That moment became my turning point. From that night on, I lived differently. Not perfectly, just honestly. I still stumbled, still doubted, still wept, but I no longer pretended. I no longer hid. I let myself be seen, by God, by people, by myself. And slowly, my heart began to breathe again. Not behind walls, but out in the open. That's where redemption grows best, in the light. More people joined our little group. Some came because they were curious, some because they were desperate, some because they had nowhere else to go. We welcomed them all, not with answers, but with presence. We didn't have it all figured out, and that's what made us trustworthy. We were real, and in our reality, God kept showing up. We prayed over people. We cried with them. We celebrated their first steps. And every time someone said, "I'm not alone anymore," I remembered why I told my story in the first place. It was never about convincing. It was about connecting, about being the hand in the dark for someone else, like Elias had been for me, and like Jesus had been all along. If you're wondering if God can still use you, if your past disqualifies you, if your story is too messy, let me tell you this: you are exactly the kind of person He uses most. You don't need to clean up before you come close. He meets you right in the dirt, and He whispers your name just like He did mine. You are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You are His. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. Genesis 50:20. This is not the story I ever imagined I would live. It is not the life I was trained for, not the legacy I thought I would pass on, but it is real. It is mine. And through every tear, through every betrayal, through every desert night, it has become sacred. I lost everything I thought mattered, only to find what truly does. I didn't find religion. I found Jesus. He didn't demand a sacrifice. He became one. He didn't ask me to prove myself. He called me beloved. He didn't erase my past. He redeemed it. And if He could do that for me, a man who screamed at preachers, who led mobs, who rejected truth, He can do it for anyone, even you. I still don't have all the answers. I still miss my children. I still grieve the life I left. But I no longer live in shame. I live in hope, because what broke me also rebuilt me. And every scar I carry is a reminder that light can break through the darkest places. You don't have to believe everything today. You just have to take one step. That's where everything begins. So if this story reached your heart, don't let it end here. Share it. Not because it's mine, but because someone else may need to know they're not alone. Comment below. Tell your story. Ask your questions. Cry your tears. This is a space for the restless, the wounded, the wondering. And if you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. You are not too far gone. You are not too broken. You are deeply, profoundly loved. And the voice that called me out of my darkness is calling you too. You don't have to understand it. Just open the door. This isn't just content. It's communion. This is where strangers become family, where silence becomes song, where pain becomes purpose. My name is Yusuf. I'm just a man who lost everything to find the only thing that matters. And I'm still walking, still healing, still hoping. Maybe you are too. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because He has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners. Isaiah 61. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you. Not just for watching or listening, but for staying present with me through every moment of doubt, pain, loss, and transformation. This wasn't just a testimony, it was a mirror. And maybe, somewhere in these words, you saw your own reflection. Maybe your story isn't the same as mine, but I believe you're here for a reason. Maybe this is the moment you've been waiting for, the whisper you've been ignoring, the invitation you've been afraid to answer. I didn't come here to convince you. I came here to tell the truth that cost me everything I thought I needed, but gave me something far greater: freedom. A freedom not built on religion, performance, or tradition, but on a person. His name is Jesus. He didn't just meet me in the middle of my pain. He stayed. He walked with me. He called me by name. And if He did it for me, He'll do it for you too. So I want to invite you, not to a belief system, not to a set of rules, but to Jesus Himself, the one who whispers in the dark, who weeps with you, who knows your past and still calls you forward. If your heart is stirring, don't wait. Take the step. Open your heart. Ask Him to show you who He is. And when you do, everything changes. Not all at once, but from the inside out. That's where healing begins. Subscribe to this channel, not just to support my voice, but to walk this road with others who are searching just like you. People who have been silenced, shamed, wounded. People who want truth, not noise. People who are brave enough to question and bold enough to hope. You're not alone. This is your space, your home, your invitation. Leave a comment below. Tell me your story, your doubts, your fears. I read them. I pray over them. We grow together here. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who feels invisible, abandoned, or lost, share this video with them. Not to preach, but to reach. That's what this is about. Not content, connection. Not sermons, stories. Not fear, freedom. You don't have to have it all together. You don't have to be clean or qualified. You just have to say, Jesus, I'm here. And He will meet you right where you are. That's what He did for me. That's what He's doing for so many others. And that's what He wants to do for you. So until next time, stay soft, stay seeking, stay open. I may never meet you face to face, but I want you to know this. You are deeply loved, you are fully seen, and you are never, ever alone. My name is Yusuf, and I'm still walking this path, still healing, still learning to follow Jesus with every step. Come walk with me. We're just getting started.